So welcome. If you've ever been at the Info Fair before, I've been doing this presentation every year with some changes and trying to bring people up to date on what's different. And I try and stay current, but really this is information about how to access services in the developmental sector. So in 2008, the Ontario government changed legislation and passed the Service and Supports to promote the social inclusion of people with developmental disabilities Act, which is like the longest name for an act. And part of the reason for that is that they wanted to ensure modern, fair, sustainable developmental service system that gives people with intellectual disabilities more independence and choice in their inclusion. And so the Act from 2008 promoted the development of DSOs across the province. So there's 9 Developmental Service Ontario offices across Ontario. Ours is the Toronto Region office, and its main office is at Surrey Place Centre in the downtown, and we have spots all over Toronto. There's also many other regions across the province who have a DSO. And the DSOs work independently for their regions for access, but also work together collaboratively in a network to try and really focus on making sure that we're consistent across how we do things for everyone in the province. DSOs are the single point of access for all new adults with a developmental disability in order to access the ministry-funded adult services and supports. And new adults could mean people who are turning 18 and becoming adults, and it could also mean people who have never accessed services and supports at any point in time, and so they're now needing them and they come to the DSO to get those. And it can also mean people who have moved to Ontario and are new in that way. So DSO is kind of the access point for any individual to get the services from the 37 ministry-funded services that are in the Toronto region. So all of those agencies provide various kinds of ministry-funded supports. Those include residential supports, activities of daily living, community participation, caregiver respite. There's professional and specialized services, person-directed planning, family support workers and APSWs, as well as access to passport funding. And there's also an urgent response component, which is very important to many people. DSO's job are to provide information about the adult developmental services in your region, to confirm the eligibility for services, to complete an application package, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means later. We're responsible for matching adults to all of those available resources that I talked about, and to review changing needs for people. So first of all, I'll talk a little bit about information provision. So we do have a website, and in Toronto we have a specific website. So if you go to the internet and put in DSO, in fact, probably what will come up is DSO Ontario's website, and then it will give you options for your region. But you can also ask for or enter the DSO Toronto website. And that website is put up by the DSO and maintained, but we work with our community so that in fact, all of the information is coming from the various agencies that come, so that we can make sure that you have access to those resources. And also, we try and make sure that links are there on the website so that families can find, where to find other things. So a really good example is the connectability website, where you can get a link to that access as well. So mostly we talk to people via phone. So people can call our 1-800 number, and that's how you would get access to a person. Now last year when I was here, I started to talk about an upcoming partnership that we were developing with 211. 211 is also ministry funded, and it's a phone number that people can call to get information about resources in the Toronto region. However, in our partnership with them, it was an attempt on our part to stop having people leave messages on a voice machine, right? Because we only have a couple of staff who could answer the phone at one time, and many families who are trying to get to us. And it's, you know, very frustrating. I know, even when I try and get staff and end up on the voice box, it's hugely frustrating. And I know that a family in need would find it even more so. So now what happens is, when you call our 1-800 number, which hasn't changed, you'll in fact reach someone who, you know, is acting on behalf of the DSO, who's actually at 211. And the advantage to that is numerous. First of all, they have worked with us, so they understand what our responsibilities are, and they can get some basic information, and then we'll call you back. That way we can, if you're already connected, we can pull up information and be not looking for that while we're talking to someone. The other thing is that if there's services that you need that go beyond developmental services, 211 is a great place to get that information, because we would actually be sending you back to them, in order to get information, so it saves time incredibly. They also have many more staff who are answering the phone, so you're likely to get someone within 45 seconds, which is our average time for answering calls there. The other real huge benefit is they can answer the phone in any language. So anyone who is calling that 1-800 number now can identify a language that they're comfortable in speaking, and they will get switched to a staff member who is able to respond in that language. And I think that's a huge part of the service that's, you know, truly beneficial. Another way that we provide information is to do presentations like the one today, but we do them all over the place. This is Melanie, she's right there, and she gives presentations along with many of our staff in school boards to make sure that families and teachers know when to make referrals. We do it with hospitals, we do it with, you know, many of the partners and sectors. So we want to make sure as many people know as possible how to access services. So as a reminder, eligibility is legislated in the act that I was talking about, and therefore, in the past, before 2011, if someone had a developmental disability, they could call any number of agencies in Toronto, and they would sort of start a process and then work towards a centralized place where we would go and sort of connect from there. Now, the legislation requires that someone has to demonstrate that they are eligible to receive those services, so that they must meet certain criteria, and therefore we're required to ask for a psychology assessment. So when anyone calls the DSO, one of the first steps is, do you have a psychology assessment? The psychology assessment tells us the 3 criteria that we match to for eligibility. So the first criteria is the cognitive one. So a person has to have a score of 2 standard deviations below the mean on a standardized intelligence test. So the DSO staff are matching to that. Also, adaptive functioning skills are extremely important, and we look at the psychology report usually will speak to adaptive functioning. So adaptive functioning is defined as a person having significant limitations in adaptive functioning, which includes conceptual skills, social skills, practical skills, as measured on a standardized test. And also there's an age criteria, which really means that you had to have had support prior to the age of 18. So this would differentiate someone who had a brain injury after 18, where there's another set of supports that are more appropriate for that individual because they've had learning trajectory up to age 18, and so different kinds of supports are appropriate. Someone who's had a brain injury before 18 and its impact to their development are appropriate for developmental services. So I just want you to know that you don't have to have a new psychology report. You don't have to have updated information. You can send us information that's been done for someone when they were younger. Often schools do them, and we've worked closely with schools since the beginning of this legislation, and they're adjusting how they're writing their psych reports so that they're easier for that transition into the DSO. However, we could look at an older report, and sometimes we say that's fine, that meets criteria, we understand that, not a problem. Sometimes we would say, I'm not sure, it was done by someone, it doesn't really, we're not familiar with this. Then we might give it to a psychologist to review, and they might say, that's fine. Or they might say, that's really not enough information, or the person may have changed, and while they're a little bit over the requirement right now that they're older, they may very well fit in. And so we would recommend another psych assessment or a more updated one. When that happens, we make a referral to Surrey Place because we have the fortunate opportunity of having those psychology assessments being able to be done in our agency. So when someone comes to the DSO and we feel that they need an updated psych assessment, we make that referral, that happens, and then it comes back to the DSO. So this is different than in other regions where they may not have access to ministry-funded psychology services in a ministry organization. And so other DSOs contract psychologists to do that work. So it's a little bit different, but in the end, everyone gets that the funding that's available to support them. So you don't have to go out and purchase a psychology assessment. Also, if we say that you're not eligible based on the criteria that we've been given, then we hope that you don't have to walk through flames in order to deal with that. What we try and do, sometimes eligibility is because there's not enough information, so we may work with that person to say, let's get more information, or let's do the psych assessment and review it. And also, people can always apply and start the process again. So there's time frames for the eligibility reviews. However, you can always start the process again if you have new information. The review process is 3-stage, and really there's time frames around it, but I won't go through it. You can always talk to someone at the DSO. So the next thing that's required, and once one's made eligible, is an application package with a developmental service worker. And we have assessors who do that. So at the DSO, an application package, which sounds kind of nice and paperworky, is actually 8 hours of interview time. So we spend 4 hours twice with an individual and their supports in order to complete this part of the process. Hang on a second. So there's 2 different tools that we use. One is called an ADSS, which is just an application information form, and one is called a supports intensity scale. Both of those are timely. And just to let you know, supports intensity scale is a standardized tool, and it measures the kinds of supports, the frequency of supports, and the time spent on providing those supports to individuals so that we can really assess properly what supports would be helpful for that individual when we're trying to match them. So we have information. People who complete the application package at the DSO are assessors who have been trained and certified to complete this in a standardized way. And when we invite people to complete this, we ask the individual, and then if they consent, we would like to have anyone who knows that person, so 2 or more people is best, to help add information. I can tell you that some families have concerns. They feel that it's very intrusive, and they feel that it's a waste of time, and some people really do know very well how to respond and can give information, but I can tell you that other families say it was extremely helpful to go through that and identify out in a very structured way what kinds of supports are required. And so we'll try and be as respectful as we can with families in order to get that information. But the outcome is to make sure that we're matching to the appropriate supports. And that information is coming from the families because they're identifying the kinds of things that they need to do to support someone. So it's really an important package. The application package is completed for all new individuals to the system. We'll also reapply, or we'll redo that package if someone has changing needs. So for example, we may have done the package with someone as they were 17, I'm going to say, and in high school. But then in fact, by the time they're 25, their situation may have changed. They're no longer in school, they have different support requirements, things can happen. And we sometimes do a reassessment. We sit down with the family, we talk about what the changes are, and there's ways of changing that so that if there's different support requirements required, we can address those and ensure that they're identified. And eventually, our goal is, and the ministry has said in the legislation, that everyone in the service sector will have had an application package. I just want to comment on the fact that the waitlist in Toronto to get an application package varies, and while we can do them within a month for people who have high changing needs and very, very high support requirements, and we want to make sure that those priorities are dealt with quickly so that they can get the right supports. Also, it can take a long time for people who don't have those support requirements, and I think we're at maybe a 13-month wait right now. Last year, we were at an 18-month, so I'm happy to say that our wait is reduced, but it's still a long time to wait for an application package. And while you're waiting, you can still talk to navigators at the DSO about what other things you can be doing and while you're waiting, and that assessment is absolutely required to access the waitlist for passport dollars. But there's other things that you can access while you're waiting for those services. And so, I don't want people to feel like now they're just having to wait no matter what their situation is. DSOs also are responsible for vacancy management in the sector, so that our service navigators help match individuals to available vacancies as they come up. It doesn't matter what kinds of services and supports they are. We register people on waitlist for programs. We make sure that we have a priority of need for people. So it's not, I came on this day and so I'm next in a queue. It's all based on people's need and priority, based on what the support availability is, which can vary. So a support may become available, and it may be for someone with extremely high needs, and so we would be looking at that group of people to make sure that we match to. But it could also be a support for someone with less high needs, and so we would start and work our way down to ensure that the person that's matched to it fits with those support need requirements. We also have a responsibility to connect people to the urgent needs system, and also for temporary supports. So urgent needs are in fact exactly that, and they're not emergency needs. So, if you have an emergency need, we totally say call 911, go to the hospital. Those are appropriate responses, and we do that sometimes. But urgent needs could be much more, we're in a bad situation, someone's moved into hospital and we need to put some supports in the hospital to maintain them. There's lots of things that can be considered urgent. You can always call and ask a service navigator about whether you're urgent or whether there's some supports that we can assist you with. Temporary supports are actually an identified period of time for dollars that are very specific with respect to how we are allowed to apply for. So a good example would be a family who all of a sudden, for whatever reason, someone's hospitalized and they're the primary care provider, and we know that that's for a discriminate period of time, and so that we can put some supports temporarily into place for that individual so that they can get through that period without having, moving into the urgent response category. So I just want to comment on the resources that we have. While we would like to have the big, huge crew, in fact, our crew is not quite so large, and we're dealing with 8,000 people who are in our database in the Toronto region, and just to let you know, we have on an annual basis approximately 1,200 new applicants to the DSO every year, and we have many people who receive those services. And we do, for assessments, we do I'm going to say over 1,000 application packages every year. So we have 13 and a half application assessors who are doing those 8-hour interviews with families and the paperwork that goes with that. 2 of them are French speaking. We have 6 service navigators who are linking and matching and helping with urgent and taking in new eligibilities, one of whom is French speaking. We have an intake coordinator who will call you back when 211 lets us know that you've called. And we have an office assistant, all of whom can speak to people in French as well. And we have a records clerk and a manager. And we have some challenges. So first of all, I want to acknowledge that, while we are doing a lot of work around provincial consistency, sometimes it's not enough, and that there are differences. And so we're constantly working to identify how we're providing services that may be different in our region to another, and rectify that to make sure that people are being served in a consistent manner, because that's what equity and availability is all about. So this guy says, they say I'm constantly screwing up, but I call it being consistent. And I think that, part of what we're trying to do is ensure that consistency doesn't always mean moving to the lowest common denominator, that we're really taking consistency to the best practice, and we're developing evidence-based practice as we go. And I think we've done a pretty good job of starting to, really work on that together across the province. We have a database that we're required to use, and that's developing. So we're about to roll out, or we're being told that we're going to be rolling out 6.0 on our Discus database. And that contains all of the information. And over the versions, it's given us more and more information, but there's challenges with it. Also, we don't have all the resources that we would like in order to be able to do things faster for people and easier, and deal with other sectors in a way that would be best helpful, but we do the best we can with the dollars that we're given to hire staff. So now this is your time to ask me questions, since nobody did during the presentation, and I hope I'll do my best to answer them. And I think we're going to give you a mic so that everyone can hear your question.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, my question is, do you help with finding jobs for people?
So I can't hear you now.
Do you help with finding jobs for people with developmental disabilities?
So the question is, do we help with finding jobs for people? So there's different ways in which we can help. First of all, we match or link to agencies who have job training programs, who may have vacancies. There's education programs like Humber who have specific training that we can match to, so they may run programs at a regular time and say, now we have 10 more spaces, and we'll get people into those. That's one way we do it. We also have a list of agencies that you may be able to contact if you have passport dollars to use to get access to those. And we also have connections to, on our website, or if you talk to someone, we may have recommendations in your part of Toronto where we would suggest you go in order to get some connections. So we may say, okay, have you tried the Ontario Works? Have you tried, so there's different ways of making sure that, we're trying to connect you to places that might support you in job promotion.
Well, actually my son has tried 2 of those agencies already, and they have all the workshops, and they ask him, okay, what would you love to do, what would you like to do, and then my son gets all excited, and then at the end of the day it comes down to nothing. And this is the second time it's happened, and I was wondering if you have an agency where they sort of are able to connect a person to an actual employer.
So I can't answer that question. Our job is to connect to agencies who have available resources, and how successful they are in completing that. I would follow up with agencies. I would talk to them about, what's your outcome? How well are you for placing? What kinds of opportunities do we have? But I know what you're saying, and we're not a job, so that's not one of the things that we can do, is guarantee that someone will get a job. I would like to, but.
Yeah, it's just, you keep on going around in circles and the end result is 0. So anyway, thank you for your answer. Thanks.
Any other questions? Can you get the mic? So that, it's coming up that side.
You've talked a bit about the application package, but what is the actual process like? Who do you call? When do you call them? And then what's the next steps? You sort of skipped over the 3 steps. So my niece is
For which part of it?
Oh, so my niece is 16.
Okay.
Or actually, she's 17 now. We did call someone. We got on a wait list. We haven't heard anything back, and I really don't know what's happening.
So in terms of process, just going through I'll just talk about the pathway. So when you're 16, you can call the DSO. 16 to 18-year-olds are encouraged, because we want to be able to have that time before you turn 18 to talk to you or get that assessment done if we can. Make sure that you're getting onto that wait list by 18, so that that's when you're actually able to be able to use the services and supports as an adult. So we do get people coming as early as 16 or 17 through the schools, and that's great. Although we may not actually set your application package till when you're closer to 18, because it works out in terms of timing, and we want to make sure that you are 18 or close to there. So that's one thing. Then you wait for the application. So once your eligibility is confirmed, you'll get a letter from us that I think in the legislation it's 21 days, but once we have all the information, we send you back a letter confirming or saying that you're not eligible for services and supports. And once you have that letter, then that starts the clock while you're waiting for the application package interviews. So, and that, as I said, can take a great deal of time. You can call us and say, so can you give me a sense of where we are or what's going on, and we can try and respond to that, but it's not quick, I can tell you. While you're waiting, if there's changing needs, if there's urgent issues, please call us, because we want to know what's different. We want to keep your information updated, and sometimes we can help in different ways, so that's important. When the application package happens, that's an interview with an assessor, and that assessor will often, 80% of our assessors actually go to families, whether it's in their home or where the person works or school or whatever, but we go to you. Many people like to come to us as well, and we have different sites across Toronto, so we do it both ways. We're able to do that, and we're flexible with time, so sometimes we do it in evenings, and sometimes we do it on weekends, because we understand that that makes it easier for families. So that's booked, and we meet with you twice, and we create, in the end, we create a report that we provide to any agency who's reviewing, so when they have a vacancy, they'll have that information, and certainly we give it to the passport office right away, because we want them to have it in their database, so when they're looking at who's in their database, that's there, so we make sure. Again, if things change dramatically over time and people's needs are different, you need to talk to us, because if that's an indication of your priority change, it's important for us to know that. But some things affect priority and some things don't, and we can talk to you about that. So then it's
Just a follow-up. What is passport funding?
So passport funding is one of the services and supports that's available in Ontario, and those dollars, because they're dollars, are provided again as money is available to people who are waiting for that money, and people's application package sort of is used as a tool for those passport offices to map to what level of dollars you get depending on your support needs, and prioritization. And then when money comes to those passport offices from the ministry, whenever that happens, and sometimes, last few years it's happened at least annually, but whatever, there's a load up of money, then that passport office goes through those wait lists and assigns people certain amounts of money that they'll be getting regularly. And those dollars are used for services and supports, for accessing things like, it's not used for rent, because that's what ODSP is. It's used for going to somewhere, getting someone to assist you in learning something, job training or coaching. So there's various kinds of things, or you can use those dollars and give it to an agency who provides those services. So there's different ways of accessing or utilizing money that you can get from the passport system. We're not the same agency that provides passport, so I think families find it frustrating when they say, where am I on the passport wait list? And we say, we don't know. You need to call the passport office. And often the passport office will say, well, if you have changing needs, you need to call the DSO. And people do feel bounced. All I can tell you is that we can deal with changing needs issues and letting you know that you're on that list. And they deal with, timing and wait list management for the passport.
Just to clarify, when you say it's dollars, is it a cash payment? Is it who it is? So it's not like you just have a little check that you can take to an agency.
Yeah, it's money. Yes,
I'm sorry, I came in late.
that's okay.
I'm sorry, I just came in late. I just have a quick question. My daughter is 16, and it's been suggested to me that I need to start the ball rolling for this DSO eligibility thing. So if I call the office,
They will ask you to give them certain kinds of information, send in different information. I think they'll ask you for, to demonstrate that you're from Ontario and Toronto, so some sort of documentation, probably a, copy of a letter or something. They'll ask you to provide, I don't think we ask for OHIP numbers, but we do ask for a psychology report, which will address your cognitive level of functioning, your adaptive skills, and if you had a developmental disability prior to age 18, she's 16, so obviously she meets that criteria, usually something from the school or a hospital or whatever. But if you don't have that, we'll ask for a school report or something, and then we'll organize around providing that psychological assessment if it's required.
okay, so if she doesn't have all of that paperwork, particularly the assessment, psych assessment, that is something that you could set the ball in rolling at Surrey Place?
That's right.
To have?
That's right.
Okay, thanks.
I was going to say, my son is 16, and I've just gone through this process, and in most cases, the school guidance, that he is in an MID program in a Toronto school, and the school guidance folks were very good at putting, because they said, yes, he is in the MID program,
Yeah.
therefore he has all the criteria. They signed off on part of the
We
form.
always ask for information from the school in particular, because they're very good at understanding what we need in order to be able to just go ahead without a psych assessment.
And so it was very, at that point, it was quite straightforward. There's a little bit of incremental paper. And then to the woman's point over here, we got a note back saying, yes, we have received this, he's qualified, and we won't talk to you for 2 years. And so
We'll talk to you if you call us,
right,
but we won't be able to provide any services and supports for that.
right, so the school was the most helpful part of it. The guidance folks there, the folks at the DSO office were very helpful, and they were very clear. Thank you for submitting it. We will now come back to you in 2 years. So that was my experience of the process.
And as 18 months are approaching, if you wonder how that's going, we can give you some information. So, just to let you know.
I figure I'll leave your phone lines alone. You've got enough people calling, so.
So I just wanted to clarify this. So once I make the phone call, I submit the proper paperwork. There's a 21-day turnaround approximately for me to get something back in writing saying that my daughter is eligible for DSO services.
Right.
And then the package will come within 24 months kind of thing.
The package is an interview, so someone will call you to set up an appointment,
So
and they'll
there's-
start that process.
Okay, so it's not like an additional package that will come, it's an interview process.
That's right.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, my son was on the waiting list for DSO. So in the meantime, do I have to apply for passport funding separately? No.
No, and so to get access to passport funding, it's actually to go through that eligibility and then application package.